In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace a lower control arm on a 2005 Honda Accord. This applies to, I believe, anything from 2003 to 2007 Honda Accords, and also to similar models of the TSX. As you can see, the grommet on the front end has pretty much broken. So the the tire is wearing out unevenly. So what we're going to do is we're going to opt to replace the lower control arm as opposed to pushing out those grommets. There's three of them, and I'll show you once I get it out. But I'm going to go ahead and simply replace it because it's cheap enough for me to get a control arm that already has these grommets in them, rather than me trying to remove this and doing it. I don't have the tools either to do all that work, so so this is it. This is the issue that ends up happening. So what we are going to have to do is we're going to have to undo this 19mm bolt, and then we are going to have to undo a 17mm bolt that will remove, let me get a video, that will remove this arm that's towards the rear of it. And then from this angle, we're going to have to come out and remove this bolt that is connected to the fork that holds the lower control arm in position from here. And then we will have to remove this nut down here and break it free of the ball joint here. So in order to help with that, we're gonna use a tool like this, or we could end up hammering this with a heavier hammer, and that also works out. We're fortunate enough to live in California, where this bolts are not as rusted as it is on the East Coast. So do make sure you apply like PB Blaster or some type of WD-40 for breaking up the rust. One other thing that we're going to have to remove is the control arm, stabilizer control arm links that attaches to the lower control arm as well. So when I get to that bolt, I'll show you how to remove it. But right now I've got a wrench in there just so that I could show you which one it is. Once we get this out, the lower control arm will be pulled out and we'll replace it with a similar one. But before we get started, you do want to make sure the car is jacked up and on stands. Never go underneath the vehicle or work on a vehicle that is not jacked up. So in addition to this, I've got the front jack in place. I'll keep that in place, but obviously the car has been lowered to be touching these jack stands. So let me get started on removing the bolts. Okay, so just wanted to show you, I've pretty much broken this loose. Initially I had to hammer this, and then a combination of using the fork to the bolt below. I put the bolt back on because I didn't really want to mess up the threads on the bottom of the ball joint. So I have managed to break it loose. As you can see, the gap has opened up. So just want to be careful not to damage your the rubber on the ball joint. Otherwise you're going to have to end up replacing the ball joint, which is going to be pretty nasty. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the nut, and then we're going to push the arm down. Okay, so we've got this loose. Now I'm working on removing the bolt for the link. The bolt that goes in here for the link has a Allen key head insert inside. Believe it or not, this is a 3/16 inch Allen key. The 4mm was too small, 5mm was too large. So I've got that inserted in here. Just basically have to work the fork forward, push this down a little bit, get the 3/16mm Allen key in here, and then use a 14-inch open end wrench and work that loose. So I'm going to get that loosened up and removed. Once that nut comes off, the lower control arm is free. As you can see, that bolt is out. So is this bolt, and you saw that the fork is already loose. So let me remove that nut and show you how to remove the control arm. Okay, so I've got the link stabilizer removed, as you can see over here. Can you see that? So this is out already. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull out the control arm. We're just going to lift up and work the different areas. And here we go. We have the lower control arm out. So basically, as you can see, this is the grommet that has broken. There is another fitting right in there. That's good. This one here is still good. And that's basically it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and reinstall this in the reverse order, obviously, with a replacement part. Let me show you what part I bought. One thing that I did want to share with you is, in the process of removing the lower control arm, once you've got the lower ball joint opened up and removed, when you lift this assembly up, you want to make sure that you do not pull the rotor and the assembly towards you, because what ends up happening is this is connected to the drive shaft. You can see that the thing is there. And then what's going to happen is you're going to end up pulling the drive shaft out from the transmission. And if that happens, you're going to have an oil spill, and then you're going to have to work your way to reinstalling that back in again. So do not pull this unit towards you once it's been unhooked from the lower control arm. So the replacement parts that I ended up getting are by Moog. You have the RK 640289. This is the passenger side, and then you have the 290 that ends that is for the driver's side. So I'm going to go ahead and do both sides. I've got the one side up and out. The other side is starting to crack a little bit. It's $78 or $75 or whatever it is for this part that I ordered from Amazon. So I'm going to go ahead and simply just replace it while I have the car in the air. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is that when you are removing the control arm link, the stabilizer arm link, I was fortunate enough to be able to use the Allen key wrench in here to hold this thing from spinning. If you live in a rustier conditioned place, what's going to happen is most likely the Allen key inside would probably have been already stripped because of rust. So in that case, what you're going to have to do is somehow get a really skinny vice grip behind in here and hold this while you end up taking the nut off. Sometimes you may even have to take a grinder to it and cut this off. This is a plastic part, and so it could come apart and break. So you may end up just simply having to cut the bolts and be done with. In our case, the rubber looks really good, even the rubber up on top. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick with what I have. However, I did pick up an extra pair for the passenger side and driver side, just in case. So these are the part numbers that I got from Advanced Auto. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out. Looking at these two parts, they look identical. So it seems like the quality of the bushings that are in here seem pretty good. The manufactured part is really good. Overall, I would say the part is a very decent replacement for this car. So it's definitely a premium part as opposed to the first grade or the normal grade of part. So definitely I would suggest the Moog. Let's see how the fitment goes. So we're just going to go ahead and reinstall this thing in the reverse order. I just want to show you how I have got the lower control arm in. I kind of used some rope, just brought it through underneath everything and tied it up to the upper most part of the spring so that I could lift this whole assembly up so that the lower control arm can go in as horizontal as possible. Then I worked on trying to get the back arm or that position in. Once that was in, I used a rubber mallet to push this one in as far as I could, all along, working on trying to keep this behind the shield plate and this in the hole wherever it falls. While I was working on that, I had to make sure that the fork remains outside of that hole so that it allows me movement. This way, once this was done, I ended up putting the bolt in for this. I've put it partially, ended up aligning the back hole. You end up having to push and pull or push up and down, and using a rubber mallet, got that bolt started. Keeping the fork forward, I'm going to go ahead and install the link control, the link connector, because the fork is in the way. I've got to use a ratchet, so I'm going to fully seat that. After I've fully seated that, I'm going to now then get the bolt for the fork through. Once that is done, but I'm not going to fully install it, then the next thing for me is to fully seat the ball joint nut. Once that is done, then I'm going to go through and tighten the 3 bolts that hold the lower control arm in its place. I did use some anti-seize on the bolt heads. This way it'll ensure it goes in easier and also prevents rust and other stuff from happening. So just in case in the future, if that ever needs to be removed, it's easier to remove. So that's basically it. That's to get this thing installed. Let me finish this up and I'll share any other tidbits that come along. So in order to get this nut seated on the ball joint, ended up having to jack up the control arm. What this does is applies pressure to the lower portion of the ball joint, and it seats itself into the lower control arm. So once that's done, I'm able to then tighten the nut. If you don't do this, what ends up happening is, since it's not seated, the bolt and the nut together start spinning. So this is one easy way of fixing that problem. Now that I've got this tightened, I'm going to back it up so it lines up with one of the holes, and then put the cotter pin in and then bend it. Okay, so I've gone ahead and finished up tightening up the that nut, got the cotter pin installed. The last thing to do is to remove all the grease marks that are on the rotor using brake fluid cleaner and a clean rag or towel paper, so that none of that stuff gets transferred back onto the disc brakes themselves. With this kind of concludes our project of trying to replace the lower control arm on a 2005 Accord. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you to learn, for you to be able to do this job on your own as well. Please like, subscribe, and leave comments down below. I'll do my best to answer the questions in a timely fashion. Thank you for watching.